All right, and can everybody hear me okay? I feel like that should have been the first thing I asked. Okay, perfect. I need to get one of those podcast microphones so it sounds like my voice is a little bit deeper and more reverb. Awesome. All right. Looks like we've got about 15 people. Is a good,
Great.
I think definitely a good safe space to get started. So yeah, just I'll start off by just saying hello to everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We're gonna, um, yeah, I think we've got a good number of people, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. I just want to say welcome. Um, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining our 1 hour virtual Meet the Candidates for City Council District 4. Right now, we have a number of candidates on the line here. So you'll see Olivia Clark, Mitch Green, Moses Ross, and I believe shortly we will see Stan Penkin. Um, I'm moderating the session. My name is Julian Thomas. I'm an advocacy committee member with Impact Northwest. This session is hosted by a number of Portland area nonprofits doing great work in the community. So I guess Ada, feel free to share the logo. And I want to just give special thanks to Portland Tenants United, the Blanchett House, SEI, Northwest Pilot Project, Path Home, Transition Projects, Our Just Future, William Temple House, Welcome Home Coalition, and obviously ourselves here at Impact Northwest. As a 501c3 nonprofit, it's important to note that we do not endorse any candidate. We do feel that civic engagement and advocating for communities we work with is really important. Impact Northwest has a two-pronged advocacy approach. My colleagues can add a link in the chat about our homeless prevention strategy. Together with our partners, we want to stress the importance of housing plus services as a solution to addressing the housing crisis here, and a contract modernization that revamps the way the public sector's contracts with nonprofits to provide housing services. With that, let's set the scene and some ground rules before we get started. All right, perfect. So let's see, let me go through. Okay, perfect. So the ground rules are, if you can see the slide in front of you, all participants are treated with respect and treat others with respect. The microphone's off unless invited to unmute. So we start hearing noises and different things like that. We'll be going through and muting people and unmuting people that we want to hear. During the Q&A, use the chat for questions or raise your hand virtually. If you're not used to Zoom, if you go to the More button at the bottom, if you have that, there should be a button to raise your hand, I believe. Let me see. That is under React, actually. Yeah, it's in the React section. And also, last but not least, this session is recorded. Each candidate will get 3 to 5 minutes to speak. And the next 30 minutes after that will be open for questions to the audience. All right. With that, I would really like to welcome Olivia Clark, Mitch Green, Moses Ross, and we'll probably see Stan Penkin soon. But why don't we go ahead and start with Olivia Clark? We'll give you 3 to 5 minutes on the clock, okay?
Thanks, Julian. Thank you. And thanks so much to Impact and all the other people who are listening in. I appreciate the opportunity. I started my career in affordable housing, so this is sort of like come full circle. But first, just let me say I'm running because I felt that we need people with experience, people who can reach across the aisle and can get things done to be running for city council in this new form of government, because we have a lot to do. We have a lot of promises to fulfill to people. And I have a track record of success. And I began my career, as I said, in affordable housing. In Eugene, I organized my neighborhood and a statewide coalition on affordable housing. I lobbied to expand the state housing agency's authorities in those days, which some of you are probably your CDCs are working. I introduced the CDC legislation and lots of other things to expand the state housing agency at that time. In fact, you may know John Van Landingham, some of you. He was our state's really last premier expert on landlord tenant law. I recruited him to work on housing issues. And I know his wife, Martha Walters, is trying very hard to get him to retire, but he's very committed to the cause. I also was very active in the National Low Income Housing Coalition at the federal level, which I'm sure you're all members of, and advocated for at least retaining, if not expanding, the federal role in affordable housing. I also co-founded with two other people CASA, which some of you may know builds farm worker housing and affordable housing. And it's still doing that all over the state, not in Portland. Portland's pretty hard, well, as you probably know, pretty hard to work with in some regards, involving the permitting process and land use restrictions. But from affordable housing, and I went on to work for local government. I worked for 3 mayors at the city of Salem on public safety issues. I worked at DEQ, where I had another impossible mission, which was to update the state's clean air plan in a Republican legislature, which I was able to do. Worked for Governor Kitzhaber for his first 2 terms. And then I came to work for TriMet. And my job was to secure resources, another kamikaze mission, to secure resources to build the Tillicum Bridge and the last 2 light rail lines. So I have a long history of working in the public interest and getting things done. I was also the board chair of the Providence Health System for a term when they were going through a big change statewide. I think housing is at the top of everybody's mind, everybody who's running affordable housing, homelessness. I'm sorry to say that things are even worse now than when I was a housing advocate some time back. I do believe that we also need to join up with the National Low Income Housing Coalition, with the National League of Cities, with the Conference of Mayors, to really work on getting an expanded federal role in housing. We need to bring back public housing, which some people like to call social housing, but we had that at one time. We were building housing that was outside the market. We need to bring that back and have more housing that is outside the market and stays affordable over time. Also important to me is public safety. I want everyone to have a better life and feel safe in this community. A lot of people don't. I want to improve the 911 response time. I want to strengthen Portland Street Response. They need to have additional authority to transport and other things. And I'm really concerned about climate change and how that's going to impact us. I want all the city bureaus to be resilient and redundant and to know what's coming, particularly the Water Bureau, BES, the Sewer Bureau, PBOT, all the infrastructure bureaus really need to be resilient and redundant given what's coming with climate change. So I really appreciate your time and talking about the issues that are of concern to all of us, and I'll look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for sharing more about your platform. I will move next to Mitch Green. Well, you've got 3 to 5 minutes on the clock.
Thank you so much for having us. This is a really important civic engagement function. As you guys know, there's 30 candidates running in District 4, and many of whom have accomplished resumes like Olivia's and just are hardworking candidates. So this is a really great way to help us feature and talk about our campaigns. I am running for a city council in District 4 because I do think that Portland is kind of at a crossroads. We're sort of at a historical juncture where it feels like there's a tension between our progressive values on the one hand and faith in the electorate's sort of this idea that the faith that anyone who's elected will actually do anything about that. And that's a really dangerous place to be in a democracy, especially when we look forward to November at the national level. And so those of us who are running in this new form of government, I mean, I think the task is quite high, and the stakes are quite high. So we need to kind of approach this using an all the above policy framework to move swiftly and tackle our crises head on. So a little bit about me. I'm the first generation or first person in my family to go to college. I grew up out by the airport. My father was a union pipe fitter. And the idea was like, well, one of us should go to college. So that was me. And like many non-traditional students, I had that experience interrupted by joining the Army kind of right before 9/11. And so my pathway to where I'm at today it takes me through a war zone. It takes me through seeing with my own eyes that when it comes to blowing things up and dropping bombs, there's no question of cost. There's no question of can we pay for it? Of course we can pay for it, and we do. But when you come home and you look at your city and you say, well, we've got folks living outside. We've got bridges that are not resilient to earthquake risk. It seems like we're always broke, right? We always sort of say, well, this is the best we can do, and I think that's a little intolerable. And I applaud everyone who's running to do something about that, and organizations like yours who are taking this fight head on. So I have a PhD in economics after that military service, and I think that's useful for this race because you're going to need someone on city council who has experience doing the cost benefit analysis that we need to do at the city across the range of issues as part of a team, as part of a cohort. And so my general dictum is that it's always less expensive to manage and prevent a crisis than it is to respond to it. It's always less expensive. And so, for instance, preventing homelessness is less expensive than putting someone in a home after they have been homeless. You guys know that? And so it's really just from a cost efficiency perspective, really good. But it's also a moral position that we can all, I think, stake our hats on. And I'm very comfortable doing that. I'm glad to see that you had Portland Tenants United up on the splash screen of sponsors, because I think that organizing for tenant stabilization and protection policies just makes good sense. Many of our families are at just one paycheck away from losing their housing. Not everyone who lives outside in a tent is, a criminal or a drug addict. These are people in our community that need our help. And so I think that our resources are well spent if we prevent homelessness. In terms of kind of headline policies that I'm running on, Olivia mentioned social housing. That's one that I think that it's a good idea whose time has come. We should bring that to Portland. I like the mixed income public development model. I think it's a really efficient way to use scarce public money to really bring down the cost curve and meet people where they're at with their income levels. And it doesn't need to compete with something like low-income housing tax credit funded affordable housing programs. So this is something new that we can add to the portfolio. I'm also an energy economist, and I've worked for Bonneville for a decade now. And I know how to make investments that make our grid and distribution system resilient against the extreme weather events that are much more common these days. And then finally, I think that if we're going to talk about safe streets, the conversation always needs to center, can you walk to and from school, to and from your place of work without fear of being run over by a car? And right now in many of our neighborhoods in District 4, that's simply not the case. So I've seen children walking home from middle school on the side of a road, and I think that's unacceptable. So we can build sidewalks, we can take care of our communities, and that's why I'm running. All right, I think I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mitch. It's great to hear more about your platform. I see Stan has joined us. I'll give you a second, Stan, to get settled. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to Moses Ross next for 3 to 5 minutes, and then afterwards, Stan, I'll have you go and talk for about 3 to 5 minutes and tell us about yourself. So you haven't missed, no one's missed anything. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that. So let's go to you, Moses. Take it away. 3 to 5 minutes on the clock.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here for this important discussion. My name is Moses Ross. I'm a 35-year resident of the city of Portland. I've lived 20 of those years in Multnomah Village. I raised a daughter as a single father here in Multnomah Village. She's a 20-year-old beautiful and intelligent girl that is a productive member of our community. And for the last 8 years, for 8 years now, I've been chair of the Multnomah Neighborhood Association. So I've seen firsthand the challenges of affordability, of housing affordability, of the challenges of the addiction and the homelessness crisis as it affects our neighborhoods here in the city of Portland. You know, there's been an analogy used of the fear of the blue tarp when it comes to the homelessness crisis, when it's affecting the suburban areas, you know, and of course in downtown, it's the actual fear of the tarp. The fact that there just fundamentally is just not the sufficient housing to mitigate this challenge that we have. And so I've always been a very big proponent of a couple things. First of all, we've got to make sure that we have long-term rent support. We've got to be able to make sure that the housing that we have, and that's why I'm also an advocate of public housing, because I'd like to take that one step further, the public housing concept, and make it rent to own, so that in over a 10-year period, after a person has a track record of reliably paying their rent, they can have that option to purchase that house. Another thing that I'm a real proponent of is converting the downtown offices that are empty right now, identifying and converting them into affordable housing so that we can make sure to support that missing middle of housing that we have here in Portland. Now, I know that there's some challenges you can't convert all of the empty office space, obviously, but I figure that from what I've heard from specialists at Eco Northwest, 5 to 10% of it can be converted, and we can do that relatively quickly. And that represents hundreds of homes that can be used to help to revitalize that downtown core so that we have a proper mix. And then of course we've got the challenge of, because of the fact that there is not the housing there, that there's the challenge that we have not been able to get them into the housing properly because of it's the 30-30-30 rule. 30% of the folks that are out there that are homeless right now have addiction problems. 30% of them have mental illness problems, and 30% of them just don't have options. Are not aware of what their options are. So we as a city have to be much more aggressive in creating more housing opportunities for our folks that are houseless right now, and B, supplying them with the wraparound services to get them into the housing, to address the mental illness issues, to address the addiction issues. So very quickly about me. My mother came from very humble beginnings. My grandparents immigrated from Mexico, and they ended up living in the Mid-Willamette Valley, and worked in the fields out there in the Mid-Willamette Valley. And what they taught me was that family comes first. You do what you have to do to make sure that your family and your community is whole, that is taken care of. And I've taken that attitude both as a single father to make sure that my daughter has all that she needs to be able to be a productive member of our community, but then also to give it back to my community. And in the 8 years that I have been Multnomah Neighborhood Association chair, I've really taken that to heart. I can give you a wonderful example of that. With the Safe Rest Village that was recently placed in our neighborhood, there was a lot of resistance based out of, well, quite frankly, ignorance and a lack of transparency by the city as far as the placement of that in our neighborhood. As chair, I realized that we had to have a way for the community to have a part of that. And so I immediately created community forums, gave people an opportunity to talk about it, pro and con. And then we worked with JOHS, we worked with the service provider, we worked with the city of Portland to sign a good neighbor agreement. And that's what it's all about. It's about establishing, having respect, listening and learning to the folks in the neighborhoods. And that's the credo, that's the attitude that I will take as your city council person for District 4. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Moses. Thank you for sharing your platform. I'm gonna now open it up to Stan Penkin. Welcome. You've got 3 to 5 minutes on the clock, and we'd love to hear your platform.
Sure. Well, thank you, Julian. First of all, let me apologize for being late. I got caught by a train, so my apologies for that. So I am a candidate in District 4. It was never my lifelong ambition to run for public office, but I've been so deeply involved in so many areas of our community in the 21 years that I've been here since moving from New York, that I felt it was a natural progression for me to run for city council. I want to bring the things that I've done as a volunteer and try and be more impactful by being a city council member. One of my motivations for running is our new city council. I believe that we need committed and qualified people to be on that city council. We need to restore trust and confidence in our government. We need to restore services for which we pay our taxes. So that's one of my major motivations for running. Until we have a functioning city council and a functioning government within our districts, across all districts, across to the mayor and the city administrator, it's going to be very difficult for us to deal with all the challenges that we have. So what's on the top of pretty much everyone's radar when you're out there on the campaign trail, people are talking about homelessness and public safety. So with regard to homelessness, I just want to share a little bit of my involvement in homelessness. So I was president of the Pro District Neighborhood Association for 7 years. I stepped down in May. Back in 2018, I got a phone call from Mark Jolin, who was then the director of the Joint Office. He said, "Hey, Stan, you know about the press conference tomorrow? We're going to announce the opening of the River District Navigation Center in the Pro District on Nato Parkway." I said, "Hey, first I've heard about it." And it was kind of surprising to the neighborhood. There had been no reach out up until that point. Went to the press conference, and then I got together with the people who were working on this, Oregon Harbor of Hope, and we subsequently, my counterpart in Old Town and myself, formed a joint homeless task force. And we spent a year working with many stakeholders across the area, people in the neighborhood, the mayor's office, the joint office, district attorney's office, police bureau, other stakeholders. And we spent a year talking about and figuring out what can we do to help the homelessness situation and how can we make this navigation center be the best it can be for the people there and for the neighborhood. And it took us a year. And we worked it out. There was opposition, as there always is when something's coming into a neighborhood. We made that happen. And it's been a success story. Even though there were some ups and downs during COVID, it's been pretty much a great success story. And TPI was and I think I see Tony's here from TPI. So that's one of the things that I was very much involved in. I will also say we took that group of stakeholders after opening the navigation center. We wanted to continue our work, and we created an implementation committee, and we started bringing together social service agencies, trying to get everybody to work together. We were going to do a presentation at city council, and that was the week COVID hit, and then we kind of disbanded. So with that, I want to say that we need to build housing. I agree with everything Moses has said, and I didn't hear what everybody else had said because I'm late. We do have to build housing, but it takes time. It takes a lot of money. We need to find ways to speed up our ability to build affordable housing. I'm not going to go into the weeds here, but there are many things we need to do. Unfortunately, we are not a city that developers are investing in right now. And we know we need 6,000 units of housing. This past year, we built about 500. So there's a lot we have to do on that front. But one of my priorities is that we have to get people off the street. into shelter, into services, a continuum of services, get people into stability and get them into permanent housing. That's really a priority. Along with that, we have to create a safer city, and that involves many things. Portland Street Response, resourcing our police bureau to better to work with the community. I have a whole bunch of ideas about that, but there's so much we need to do. So I don't know how much time I have left, but thank you for this conversation. And again, sorry I was late.
No problem, Stan. Thank you so much for sharing and letting us know a little bit more about you and some of the things that you would like to do. Wow, look at us, right at the 29. So we're making very, very good time. Thank you, all the candidates, for staying within that 3 to 5 minutes. Everyone did a great job. So I just want to make sure to let you all know you're doing great. Now I'd like to open it up for questions and answers. So feel free to enter your questions into the chat or raise your virtual hand. I can easily unmute you, and what we'll likely do is we'd like to give each candidate about 1 minute to answer. So I've got a little timer next to me so I can hold everybody accountable a little bit, but let's go ahead and do that. So it looks like we have our first question. This looks like a pre-submitted question from Carol. Homelessness in Westmoreland. If you were elected, would you make the Moreland Sellwood Business Association get a security officer for the businesses along the Southeast Milwaukee Avenue in Westmoreland area? They need one. All right, that's the first question. Let's see, who would like to go first?
Well,
So let's go Stan first.
so let me just I can't speak specifically to Westmoreland. I know the area. I have a daughter, a family who lives in Sellwood. One thing I just want to share, something that we did here in the Pearl District. We created a nonprofit called the Northwest Community Conservancy, and we are providing humanitarian and security services for the entire Pearl District. I wish it was something we could roll out beyond the Pearl District. Maybe someday we can. But in the past 18 months, since we started as a nonprofit, we've been able to get 1,500 people off the streets into shelter, into services, and in some cases, give somebody, to put somebody in a bus to reconnect with their family. And there's one specific case, somebody we got back to Pennsylvania. So that's something we did as a community because services that the city didn't provide. So that's a model that perhaps Westmoreland could look at, and I'd be happy to talk to them further about how we did it here.
I'll go next.
That was exactly a minute, Stan. Great job. All right, Moses, let's see what you got.
Honestly, I am against the privatization of security for the business associations. I'm against that. I think that this is a city responsibility. And when you use nonprofits or you use organizations like what Stan has created, you're also taking away living wage jobs. These aren't union jobs. And so if they were from the city, if the city had provided the services, the security services, those would be union living wage jobs. And that's, to me, even more important than providing the security, providing security officers, placating the need for the visible effect of what they have. Now, what we have to do, though, is at the city, we have to provide that sense of security. And that's what's important. And that's what I would be working towards, expanding Portland Street Response, expanding security services like the Clean and Safe program. Thank you.
Perfect minute again. I love that we have diversity in our ideas as well. All right, Olivia.
Yeah, I'm not going to echo everything that Moses said, but I had written down for myself that the proliferation of private security is not a good thing. And I think we see that happening all over the place. for a variety of reasons, but primarily because we don't have enough police, we don't have enough park rangers, we don't have enough cadets in the cadet program in the police department. We need more eyes on the street, and we need more community policing. You know, we only have 0.9 police officers per 1,000 people in Portland, and 7 or 8 years ago, we had a lot more than we have now, and we're still growing as a city. The national average is 2.4 police officers per 1,000 people, and the police department, the chief and the union will tell you we don't need the national average, but we do need several hundred more police officers, and we need to deploy them strategically, correctly. We also need to bolster Portland street response, which I think I mentioned earlier, but we need to bring back community policing so that people are on the street, that there is a presence, whether it's just driving by or on a bicycle. I think that would help. It would help with people's perception of safety. I think we all want to feel safe, and we don't feel safe. I don't know that the crime statistics back that up, but I'm not really excited about the proliferation of private security, I must say. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. All right, Mitch, last but not least.
Yeah, I tend to agree with this idea that we should not be facilitating the proliferation of private security in our communities. I think that when we talk about the relationship between homelessness and crime and mental health addiction and substance abuse, those are a nexus of interrelated phenomenon. But it's important not to sort of criminalize that, particularly so if we're trying to build trust and rapport with people who we may want to move out of homelessness and into a pipeline, right? And so I think that if you've got private security patrols walking up and down the street, it undermines that kind of trust. I would support the city funding, sort of a fund to kind of help homeowners who might have a broken window or have experienced some monetary damages from the presence of this as we work toward addressing our problems at their root cause. But I don't support investing in increased policing, whether private or public, for this problem. I will say, if we do give Portland Street Response the resources that it needs and empower them to do their best work, you'll have the Portland Police be freed up to take more calls with more urgency at a higher acuity rate. And so I think that's something that we would all agree upon. Thanks.
All right. Great. I think, let's see. I've got Stan's hands raised. Is it based on the last piece that we spoke about? All right. Maybe I can give 20 seconds on the clock if we're doing like a little bit of a rebuttal action, just to make sure that there's some space to answer any questions back and forth.
Sure, just real quick. I'm not excited that we did what we did here in the Pearl, but if the city was providing those resources, we wouldn't have had to do it. And that's why we do. We were being inundated with campers and tents and drugs and all of that. So we had to do it. And our focus is mostly on the humanitarian side, where we are helping people who are on the streets. That's our major focus. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. And then the next question here, it looks like this is regarding Portland's mayor. And this is from RJ. Since working with Portland's mayor will be crucial in all of your proposed plans and visions in Portland, have you endorsed a mayoral candidate? If so, why did you endorse the candidate? And if not, do you have any mayoral candidates that you prefer? Who or why? Who would like to go first on this one? I see Olivia's hand raised, so let's go with Olivia.
Sure. I'll just say that while I've been endorsed by Carmen Rubio and Renee Gonzalez both, I've made it really clear from the very beginning that I'm staying in my own lane, that I'm not endorsing a mayoral candidate at this time. And in fact, I have to say right at this moment, I'm not even sure who I'm going to vote for when it comes to November 5th or earlier. But I'm staying in my own lane and not endorsing. So just leave it at that.
I love the transparency. Looks like Moses unmuted. Let's go to you.
Well, I think, elections are for opportunity to make a statement. And when it comes to the mayoral candidates, I tend to lean towards Carmen Rubio. But I will say this, I've been endorsed by Mingus Maps. I like his approach and I like his community-based approach. I worry that I do not support Rene Gonzalez. I tend to think that he is a little bit more center-right than I am as far as management of our city. And I feel that, the only challenge that Carmen Rubio has right now is because of her poor driving record. And that's distracting from her actual track record of being able to do good for our city. So we have to, so I just leave it at that. But I will say this, that, this mayor's race is just as important as this city council race. So I don't blame Olivia for not wanting to take a position. I mean, no matter what she would say, she'd probably get in trouble, and probably I alienated somebody by tactfully endorsing Mingus Maps, but that's who I've endorsed.
Love it. I love it. A lot of back and forth. This is good. We're getting a diversity of opinion and different things. So I saw Stan. I think you went off mute first. I'll go to you, and then we'll go to Mitch after that.
Sure, I'm pretty much where Olivia is. I'm staying in my own lane. I have worked with every one of them on different issues over the years. I've also worked with, and they've all endorsed me, including Commissioner Dan Ryan has also endorsed me. I've also worked with Keith Wilson, and he and I moderated just about a year ago a behavioral health forum where we had about upwards of 500 people attending. So I've worked with all of them, Keith and all the other three. So I am not going to endorse anyone at this time, and I too have to make a decision about who I will ultimately vote for. Thanks.
All right, let's go to Mitch.
Yeah, I haven't made any formal endorsements, but I'm going to be voting for Carmen Rubio at the top of my ticket, primarily because she has taken concrete efforts towards expediting and streamlining our permitting process. And that's going to be really germane to the discussion and the work that you guys do. It doesn't really matter what money we throw at this problem. If we can't permit and cite resources, we're going to be stuck. And so she's done that, and I admire her for that. I will not be voting for Rene Gonzalez in any rank. I fundamentally reject his style of politics.
All right. I love this transparency. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you, everyone, for keeping the timing to a minute. So the next question we have is from Andy. Do you support or oppose the city's recent efforts to increase and enforce camping bans and criminal sanctions as part of the tools that we use to address the impact of unsheltered homelessness? Why or why not? Who would like to go first? I'm looking for, I can see you, so feel free to unmute. Oh, I see Mitch. All right, Mitch is going first this time.
Yeah, I'll kick this one off. I don't support the turn towards a kind of incarceration style approach to this issue. And the reason is because there's no shortcuts. And I think that unless we have built the sufficient sheltering capacity that we need to build, and we've built kind of longer term solutions for folks experiencing homelessness, you're not going to have any bang for your buck by having police make more frequent contacts with people living outside. It's just really expensive when you do that. It takes away from the other work that the police are supposed to be doing, and I don't think it moves us forward. So I don't support that approach, and I look forward to kind of working with anyone who wants to solve our homelessness issue at its root cause.
All right, I see Olivia is off mute. Go for it.
Thanks, Julian. I don't think that criminal sanctions are really the best route. But I must say that if there is a threat to public safety or a threat to public health, that is an option. And actually, in speaking with the police, there's very few people that have received any criminal sanctions. I think I heard maybe 6 or 7 that have gone to jail. It's not really being used at this point. But I have to just add that in my campaigning around District 4, that unfortunately there is a real sense of compassion fatigue. that people are tired of what they see on the street, and they feel like they voted in support of measures to address the issue, and things are not happening, at least not fast enough to their satisfaction. So while I appreciate that, and I think you're just going to see more compassion fatigue, which may lead to a greater use of criminal sanctions if we don't hurry up and build more TAS facilities or the continuum of options. But again, if there's a threat to public safety or public health, I think then you may need to call in the police, but that's not my first choice. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Olivia. All right, it looks like I couldn't tell who went off mute first.
Go ahead, Ms.
Let's
Stan.
see. Okay, let's go with Stan first. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Moses. So I must say I do support it reluctantly. I think we have to change the dynamic that we have on the streets. I don't believe in criminalizing people who are homeless, but we can't keep enabling the situation like we have. It's not getting better. So I think that criminalization in some cases can, the threat of criminalization can help with some people to get them off the street and get them into shelter. Yes, we have to build many more shelters. The city is working on that. There's another task site in North Portland that's being prepared right now. But I think the criminalization should only be in the most egregious situations. And I know that the first arrest that took place where the sheriff would not take that case, and I think everybody heard about that. I happen to know that was an egregious situation, and that person was creating many harmful situations on the street, and I think they had no choice. So again, only in the worst of situation should we be criminalizing anybody.
All right, thank you, Stan. Moses, go for it.
I think we as a society need to maintain and establish and maintain an empathetic approach to the situation, to those that are on the street. I am fully against the criminalization of unauthorized camping. I feel like it's up to us at the city to make sure that there is sufficient bed space available to them. One thing I've learned on the trail is that, there's about a 30-30-30 split about of the folks that are on the streets right now. 30% of them have mental health issues, 30% of them have drug addiction issues, 30% of them don't have options for housing. And we can mitigate this if we come together in an empathetic approach as a community and as a city focused on creating the bed space. We can do this, and we don't have to do it in a manner that is placates the center right and the frustration, the community frustration. I think we just need to do our jobs at the city. And if we do that, we will create the bed space that is needed, and we will create the shelters that are needed to get them off the street, to give them options for both addiction challenges, for both the mental health challenges, and to give them just basic options of shelter.
All right, thank you. All right, it looks like we have another question that just flowed through the chat. This is a pre-submitted question from Sean. Exciting to see some of the cottage clusters going up in the neighborhood. We need more housing. However, we recently learned that these developments are not required to have centralized trash collection. They also aren't required to have parking. On my street, 11 units are going in with another 8 planned next year. This means that on trash day, there will be 57 bins on the street competing with 20 to 60 cars. If spaces proceed regulations, the bins will take up a lot of space, and there'll be competition with the cars. Very interesting. Yeah. We've seen the impact of no parking development in other neighborhoods. The trash situation will compound this problem 10 times and jeopardize the nation infill efforts. Are you aware of this problem, and what will you do about it? Who would like to go first?
I'll jump in. Why not?
Okay, go for it, Moses.
Well, when it comes to the Safe for Us village that's in my neighborhood that I've helped to try to mitigate the impact on our community with through collaboration with JOHS and with the service providers and with the city, this is a valid concern. This is a very valid concern. It sounds like we need to make some adjustments to it. And it sounds like this is something that the neighbors, the community that facility is at, needs to bring it to the attention of the city. And it seems like a pretty easy solution here. You know, but unfortunately, we have a city government right now that takes easy solutions and makes them complicated. You know, I would like to think that on the city council, this would be something that a constituent would be coming to me to try to mitigate the issue with, and I would be in turn working with my compatriots in my district and working with the bureaus, the appropriate bureaus, to make sure that it gets mitigated properly, and then take the solution to it and apply it to other projects.
All right, thank you. I see Mitch is unmuted. Mitch, would you like to go next?
Yeah, if I understand the question right, I think it's about sort of infill development projects in our neighborhoods. My position on parking is that we should not mandate minimums for parking. And the reason why is it's already really expensive to develop in this city. And if we want to get ahead of or even catch up really to our housing production rate that we need to maintain affordable housing, or even to hit that goal, we need to do what we can. And so it might be unpopular to say this, but I don't think that we should cede ground on the parking minimums question. I do think that there are ways to address the community impact with trash cans. I mean, I think that if you've got more dense development, there's no reason why you can't consolidate trash pickup. We don't need to multiply in linear fashion bins. So I don't really think that that's a realistic outcome. And if it is, then the city should say, how do we make this more efficient? There are cities in the country that have very dense populations where this is not an issue. So I think we can tackle it.
Thank you, Mitch. Two unmuted at about the same time. Who would like to go first?
I'll defer to Olivia.
Oh, thank you.
right.
What a
She's
gentleman.
much prettier than I am.
I think this is kind of an example. The parking is an example of competing priorities that we have and that the city council will have to wrestle with. You know, we have a priority in our climate emergency plan, and our environmental side is to reduce parking, if not get rid of it, and really move more people to transit or to bicycling and walking where it's possible. And on the other hand, we have, neighborhood livability issues to contend with. And so that's a hard one. There's a tension there. And I'm certainly willing to take another look at those issues if they're brought before the city council. I wasn't aware of the trash problem. I do think that we have kind of a mishmash when it comes to trash regulation in this area from Metro and the city, and the franchise agreements are a little confusing. Maybe we need to work on some consolidation there, or some of the ideas that Mitch brought forward about what happens in other countries where there's more dense living situations. And actually, Stan might have an idea, living in the Pearl district, how trash is dealt with in the Pearl. But this is kind of an example of a couple of issues that I think the city needs to reckon with, as long as people come forward and bring those issues to the city council or to their city councilor in their district.
Thank you, Olivia. All right, Stan, take it away.
So the parking issue is a conundrum, because when you build parking into a building, to the point Mitch made, it makes it far more costly. Certainly for smaller units, it's not at all feasible. For larger, taller buildings, it becomes a little bit more feasible because you could spread out the cost a little bit more throughout an entire building. So that is a conundrum, and something at some point I think we're going to have to deal with. As far as trash is concerned, one of the issues in Portland, and as far as the Pearl is concerned, most of the trash are within, because they're bigger buildings. So for the most part, from the big buildings, it's inside. So the trash is inside, and trucks come in and they pick up the trash for the most part. It's a little bit different for storefronts. But one thing, I come from New York. In New York, we had a sanitation department. We didn't have 10 jurisdictions that deal with trash. And I've talked about this to some current leaders in our city that we should look at creating a sanitation department where we have control in one place. And I've written about this in one of my very early newsletters that you could see on my website. So that's something that we really have to look at very, very seriously.
Julian, can I just add one thing?
20 seconds on the clock. Go for it.
Just that I think the average cost of a parking space is something like $60,000. It's probably even more than that now. When I worked at TriMet, it was really difficult to know how much parking to build at the different stations, and sometimes we won and sometimes we didn't win. You can see that on the green line, too much parking.
And if I make a 20-second comment too, I think this trash issue is one issue, but should not, I think the cottage cluster concept is a very solid concept for density purposes, for the efficient use of property purposes. And if we can mitigate the issue, great. But it should not be a detriment. It shouldn't get in the way of continuing that approach.
Okay, great. Just in the spirit of equity, Mitch or Stan, do you have anything else you wanted to add? No pressure. I just want to make sure everyone feels like they had a.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of losing a seat to Stan and Olivia, I will just echo that I strongly support public sector sanitation. Like, I think we should probably bring that in-house. Yeah.
Okay. Good, Stan? Good. Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Well, we are at the 55. So unless we have one, final question and we can have everybody go real quick, we are really getting to the end of this. Does anybody have any other final questions that they would like to throw out to the group? I love that there's been so much, I will say this is a very brave thing to be a candidate and to say your piece where that other people might feel differently about how you feel, and but it's I think this makes this process really special here in Portland. So awesome. Okay, well I'm gonna go ahead then and close us out if that's okay. See Stan's hand just came up. What do we got, Stan? Talk to me.
Julian, just real quick to what you just said. I think it's important. We all have different ideas and we may not agree, but I think a forum like this is where we can talk about our different ideas. And I envision a city council where, if Mitch and I disagree on something, we can talk it through. And that is my hope and my optimism that I think we can do with this new city council. And I'm very optimistic because being on the campaign trail with my opponents, our friendly opponents, we talk about things, we care about the city, we want to fix things, we want to make it better. And I think we can all work together to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Stan. Anyone else want to echo anything Stan said before closing? Sound good? All right, I see Mitch.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Stan, and taking that last minute to make that point. I'll also say with ranked choice voting and proportional ranked choice multi-member districts, you can just vote your values. You can just say, you know what, this is my ranking, and whatever comes of it, great. And I do have a lot of confidence that with the diversity of ideas and the passion that voters have, we're gonna get 3 good elected representatives out of this district.
Awesome. Any final pieces on that, either Olivia or Moses? No pressure.
Well, I would just thank you again, Julian, and all the other people from Impact and the other organizations for making this possible. I would also encourage all of you, when your voters pamphlet comes out, to look at the endorsements. That'll also give you a sense for where people are at. I've been endorsed by Home Pack and the Portland Neighbors Welcome as a housing advocate. So I think if you look at those, you'll also get a sense of who can work on your issues best. Thank you.
Great. And then Moses.
Well, one thing I've learned as neighborhood association chair out here in Multnomah is that the untapped resource that we have is our collaboration between faith-based and community-based organizations. There's because of the faith-based organizations losing their congregations the way they have, many of them are very receptive to using their excess property to be able to build housing, be it cottage clusters, be it safe rest villages, be it pods, or be it affordable housing. I think when I'm on the council, I will be working closely with those folks to be able to utilize that space to make sure that we get the proper housing that we need in collaboration with those groups and with your groups. So thank you for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for all the candidates for giving us the opportunity to hear more about your positions. Again, I really appreciate everyone being so transparent with their views. It's brave to come out here and do this, and I hope you feel that. We'll make sure that this recording is available following the session. But aside from that, I'm happy to let everybody end on time, and I hope you had a great lunch. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Julian.
Bye, everyone.